We are Southern Illinois.
Simpson, Shea Jones in motion. Claps his hand, chest high, give to Lesser, goes right up the gut, near the white goal line, and he streaks across the S and Simo in red and black trim.
It's time for Saluki football.
Williams, quick curl, far side. Davis has it on his shoulder, stays on his feet, 50. He could go, middle of the field, 40, between the hashes, 30, at the 20, 10, 5, touchdown! Touchdown! And possibly the death nail in the war for the wheel.
Now, here is the voice of the Salukis, Luke Martin.
Bye week is done, which is why these two are back. Mike Trude, Pat Poor, Luke Martin. So great to have you with us here for your Saluki podcast, or Saluki football podcast, previewing the Indiana State Sycamores. We are finally back at Saluki Stadium after a month away. It's almost like, guys, I got to remember how to get back into the radio booth there at Saluki Stadium. It's been so long.
I just want to say, with technology we have, we both could have been on with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I blame you a little bit.
You know, you see how that goes.
Because you just decided I'm doing this all by my lonesome.
Well, but also, let's say technology to get you, yes. Technology to get him, probably not.
Hey,
you know.
Full disclosure, where I was at in western Kansas, I don't know, the Wi-Fi reception might have been a tough deal.
Well, let's start off, though. We don't normally do this, but let's talk about them Tigers.
Yeah.
What a win, man, for the alma
Holy
mater.
cow.
It was your first time back since when, Coach Poor? It's been a while.
It was 36 years was the last homecoming game. I was actually coaching in that one. Yeah. 1989. I dropped some dates on some people back there, like 1974 came out and 1980, and but
Love
like what a great experience. So I know Mike's went well too, but it's just, it really reaffirmed to me how great it was to have the opportunity to play college football and then coach college football. And it was all about those relationships. Just whether it was guys you played with or guys that hung around with guys that we played with, and just old instructors and people that had followed my career that, you hadn't thought about for years and years and years. And I am getting old. A couple, 2 or 3, it was like, dude, you got to give me a first name, because I don't remember who you were, but yeah, it was awesome. And tremendous job, that school, just branding itself and continue to grow, and the vision and what they've done out there is awesome.
Mike, for you and your bye week, how did you spend it? I know you were out traveling, and you were a busy man too last week.
Yeah, again, a reunion, 50th high school reunion. Wow. Graduated Barrington High School back in 1975, and it was unique because I had never been back inside the high school since that time. So I took a tour, and the school generally is structurally outside the same. There have been a lot of improvements, obviously. Inside, there were only a couple of areas that I actually recognized from back in the day, so to speak, and that was the gymnasium area where the different gyms were that we had wrestling or gymnastics or whatever in. And then the performing arts area was basically the same. The auditorium is still exactly the same as it was when I was in school there, and they're actually not tearing it down, but renovating it and building a brand new state-of-the-art auditorium starting next year in June. But a tremendous time. The Broncos won their game, and I looked up on the wall where they have all the records of all the different Barrington high school teams, and our 1975 football team is one of only 4 Barrington football teams that made it to at least the semifinals of the Illinois high school playoffs back in the day. And back in the day, we were just the first team to ever reach the semifinals. So they've had 3 since that time. But we finished 3rd in the state that year, lost to eventual champion Rockford East, who had the 4x100 relay state champion in their backfield.
And more importantly, your name was probably still up there on that National Honor Society plaque, right?
They took those down, fortunately, but it was an amazing time. Had over 170 returning.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Kids from my kids. old farts from my graduation year, and we had over 670 in my graduating class. So 170 plus is not too bad.
No, that's a great return on that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm glad you guys were able to enjoy the bye week. Yes, I had to rib you a little bit from afar.
But how unusual does a bye week fall
on both those things for
on
you
both
guys?
of those, let alone
Yes.
a 50th
Yeah,
reunion?
Well, and I'm sure this will shock all those that are listening, watching, however you take this in. Bye weeks are really the only time you can ever get away during the football season, and sometimes they don't always fall on the ideal weekend, man. There's always that weekend where you're like, man, I'd love to go to that, but got a broadcast, got a game, you coaching all those years. I mean, it's always very difficult to make time. I'm glad for both of you guys that you were able to really get that in.
It was awesome.
And was shocked that you were surprised that you didn't get a call from me. You know, that I missed you last week.
I know, the whole week I was like, yeah, kind of waiting for that, waiting for that call. Didn't get it, but that's okay. We got a great podcast today. Head coach of Indiana State football, Kurt Mallory, is going to join us later on. You'll really enjoy that conversation with Coach Mal, who is just a man that I just have so much love and respect for and had the opportunity to work with. But before we get to Indiana State, I know we didn't get time, of course, last week to recap the SEMO win, and it was just a phenomenal win for SIU and getting the wheel back. Now, Coach Hill and the team, I get it. Their motto has been, we have to move on from that. There is a huge gauntlet to come, and we understand that. We'll get to Indiana State in a matter of moments. DJ, National Player of the Week. Chris Presto was named from another publication. FCS Nation is the National Defensive Player of the Week. Those guys getting so much love from the Valley. Derek Harden, I believe, the Offensive Lineman of the Week. It was so deserved all the way around. Just those games, as we talked about, and Coach Poirier said, they come down to the very end. And for SIU, from the very first snap to really the last snap, just controlled that football game, Mike, in that big win where they put up 59 points.
And for the second week in a row, DJ called that first play. It was through what they do on Thursdays and Fridays and looking over their best plays or openers, as they're called. And Nick, again, Coach Hill wanted to call a different play. And DJ for the second week in a row said, I think if we get the look that I want to see, it can go to the house. It went to the house, 75 yards. He broke, 3 tackles probably along the way, and he's never shying away from contact to begin with. But that was the start of just an offensive onslaught by DJ, the receivers, the running backs, offensive line played well. It was just one of those complete offensive games where Southeast Missouri had no answers defensively.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that I really got a kick out of was all those explosive plays were in a lot of different ways. You know, it wasn't just DJ taking off. You know, he threw a great post route that was just off a great route. You know, just a bomb. And then we had some explosives off of Yak. You know, a short catch, and took it to the house. And I really like just seeing that trust between play caller Nick and him, and just that relationship that, I talked to you guys about it. It's really cool to see how we've played from ahead,
Yes.
and we haven't like sat back and it's like, hey, we're up X amount of scores, whatever. We just keep coming. We keep coming. And I think that really is the process that Nick talks about. It's like, hey, the next play is the most important play. The next game's the most important play. And I think there's a big buy-in in that with this team.
I do too, and I was impressed during Nick's press conference the other day when he said, talking again about that game, was none of the play calling was about behind the line of scrimmage type stuff. Everything, with even the short passes, were downfield. I don't mean downfield, but forward passes, not screens behind the line where you've got to make blocks perfectly to make or get a break on a run. These were slants. These were outs that worked up. They were bombs. They were just, everything was moving north-south, and Southern did very little east-west on offense.
And I think you got to talk about the defense from the standpoint of the job they've done in calling to how the game's being played. From the naked eye, it's like, wow, SEMO's carving us up, but it was short stuff. It was RPO throws, and we made them earn it as we were playing well offensively from ahead.
Well, I think diving into the strong starts this year, I think this really puts it into perspective. I brought up some of these numbers with Coach Hill on our Inside Saluki Athletics show. Let's just go through last year, which, look, there are many areas that you can point to of the why and why some of these numbers were what they were. But on the year, the Salukis only had 169 total yards gained on their opening drives. In every game combined, 21 touchdown drives in the first half. 10 of those 21, by the way, came in 2 games, Murray State and Incarnate Word. But there were 8 times they went 3 and out on the opening drive. Half of those times they had negative yardage on their opening drives. Okay, so what is it this year? Already 279 yards of total offense corralled on their opening drives, 0 3 and outs, 0 negative drives, and already 12 first half touchdown drives. This team has just found a way to get off to a great start, keep that foot on the gas pedal. And we know there's going to be a game at some point in time this year where it doesn't go well to start, and SIU is going to have to try to find to flip it in the second half. But at least for now, man, this team is not playing behind the 8 ball for very long.
And 4 straight opening drives with a touchdown is phenomenal. When even if you don't win, or if you win the toss and you defer, and that team scores with a field goal or a touchdown first, you've been able to answer every single week, whether you got the ball first or got the ball second. That's amazing.
And some of that's that it factor that we talked about, because Nick is really good. I remember those years going through those openers, those 17 plays or 20, whatever we had, that that was your best stuff, and you're striving for perfection. You want to, that first drive, you want to go out and score.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, we've alluded to it, change of play. You give DJ the option of get us in the best play, and that gets your drive started, and that gets your game started. And I think that's been a piece of it that's been different than last year.
That rapport that those two have together is like, I don't know, like nothing I've seen out of a pair here in a long time, where that trust just goes back and forth both ways so well.
You want to talk about rapport? How about rapport between DJ Williams and Vincent Davis?
Oh, my goodness.
VD is going to, I'm sure Coach Tuke is glad that this is the last year for Vincent Davis at Southern Illinois. A remarkable game, 8 receptions, 185 yards and 2 scores. VD's 3 career games against SEMO, over 600 yards of total offense. Just he's always had his best games against SEMO. But what's been impressive is that's been a continuation of what he has done this year. And another area that I don't think VD gets the credit for, guys, one, his speed is remarkable. We saw that on display when he just outran everybody for that long touchdown in the second half. But to me, it's his strength. That is one strong dude. And when you kind of look at him, you think you see the small stature in the slot, and you're like, probably more of a finesse. There is nothing finesse about Vincent Davis and what he's done this year.
No, and you say it about Gale Sayers. Here I go dating myself again, but Gale Sayers never got hit square. And VD's almost like that as well. He'll run his pattern, and there will be a DB right there to make contact, but it's not the contact where it's just, bam, you're going down. VD always does something to alter the contact where he's got a chance to use his balance and get away from that tackle and keep his yards after catch going.
And I think VD would tell you this too. As a quarterback, you always get the flowers. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But one of the key things with the great quarterbacks, Joel had it, Nick had it, you make everybody else better, and I think DJ is doing a good job of that, and I think VD would tell you that too. And you see that trust, like we're talking about, through the practice process and the success in games of, like, not necessarily he's our go-to number 1 target, but that spreads. Those other guys, they're confident. They know the ball's going to be where it's supposed to be when they are targeted and that type of thing.
And the continuity up front, it's one of those areas where you take for granted when you have really good O-line play. I mean, you just do, because not a lot of negative plays happen, and you have those huge explosives, which is what this team has had. To kind of carry that point, Coach Poor, we were chatting about earlier. If you listen to our pregame show this weekend, you'll hear a great interview that Mike True did with Noah Finsky. But it's all the guys are in the positions they should be in. And that's where it wasn't that way last year. Not that you think about it, but, man, when you can find guys that can stay healthy, that have that continuity, can play on one string, however many ways you want to describe it. That has been, they deserve just as much credit as what DJ has done and obviously all the rest of the skilled guys.
Well, if you look at it, it'd be like Vincent Davis having to play the wideout instead of the slot receiver. He's best at slot receiver, or moving a running back out to the slot receiver because of an injury situation. Last year on the line, there were so many guys banged up. Some couldn't even practice, but they would play in the game. So somebody had to fill that spot during practice, and you still want your best 5 guys out there during practice to give everybody the good looks. And just for instance, Noah Fenske last year was our tackle, but he played 90% during the week at center because our center didn't practice, but he played in the game. So now there is that continuity, and Noah said that just the togetherness of this group this year and the fact that they're all, 5th, 6th, some 7th-year seniors for the most part, this is their year, and they really feel it.
Yeah, and I've said it since last spring, the summer, when it was like, hey, finally, Fenske's at center, and you always want to be strong up the middle. And from the outside looking in, if you're just watching a game, by when I say being strong in the middle at the center, quarterback, tailback positions at center, it's not the physical strength. It's amazing what that position, what that guy has to do on every given play in terms of identifying the front, setting the protections, even to the point where he's looking in the secondary some to pick up on, field dogs and things like that. And he's a quarterback in itself of those guys up front, and that does get overlooked a ton.
We spotlighted him last week on our podcast, but LaShawn Lester, 2 big touchdowns in the game. One that the game was already out of reach, but it was just yet another big touchdown run for him late in the game. But 6 carries, 62 yards. That's 10 yards per pop. We know DJ's going to get a bulk of the carries throughout this year, and there are going to be teams that are no doubt going to key in on him. But I think you can see, one, him being healthier has changed. But, man, it's a running back room that may not have the most overwhelming, eye-popping numbers right now, but it seems like when they do get a carry, all of them have been able to make it an impactful run.
And they are pushing each other, and that's something that LaShawn had none of last year. There wasn't a number 2 or number 3 guy behind him last year that was really pushing him for playing time. Then when he got hurt, he missed a substantial amount of time with that ankle of his. He thought he would get it straight and come in, and then would get banged up in the game and not have to come in. But healthy, how many times can we say being healthy is so critical?
Yeah.
But he's got guys behind him now that are pushing him to be better, and I don't think that was necessarily the case the last couple of years.
I've been really impressed with just the balance of Nick's offense, the Saluki spread, whatever you want to call it, from the standpoint of the running backs. We talked from jump how important that position was going to be this year in terms of running back handoff runs. And I think they've continued each week to get better at getting in the hole and out the hole. There wasn't a lot of – that's where those negative runs come from sometimes. You're trying to get it right. You're picking and choosing back there. It's like, dude, just smoke that thing. Get in it and get out of it. And I thought we did a lot better job of that. But, just the combination of those handoff runs to the tailback, the mix of DJ runs, and then we've talked about it. Part of our run game is the perimeter screens, the nows, the bubbles, all that type of stuff.
But I also think that goes to the confidence in the offensive line. The tiptoeing around last year that we noticed a lot with the running backs was, is the hole there? And I'm trying to find it, and then once I found it, it was too late.
Yeah.
This year, they had that confidence in the line that if it's whatever the play call is, they've got their little handoff, and then they see that hole and they go north-south in a hurry, where a year ago that just wasn't the case. So it's that complementary, I need you for me to do well, and everything's got to work in cohesion, and it is this year because it all starts up front.
Yeah, and believe me, just getting positive yardage on those run plays makes it so much easier as a play caller, because now that book's a little bit more open. That third and long playbook is gets pretty short, and when you can just dial up the whole offense, you have the success that you saw like last week and the week before.
you brought it up. I think it's a fair point too. That yes, the offense. I think when you put up 612 yards of total offense, SEMO did have 569 yards of total offense in the game. And you hear that number, and you think, man, as you said, Coach Board, just really got carved up. Didn't want to necessarily play well. But I don't think that's necessarily a fair representation of what the Saluki defense did, and especially when you think of making the timely play. I mean, there may not have been a more timely play than Chris Presto forcing that fumble on Brown there on their opening drive, which, of course, then Colin Bohannick picked it up and couldn't use all of his quick speed to get into the end zone. But he was close to getting all the way there. But they were still able in that game to make a timely play when they had to make it.
Yeah, and every game's different. And in today's football, with the offenses the way they are, and let's give credit to SEMO, that quarterback was good.
Yeah.
And they had good receivers, and their scheme was good. And it comes down to you got to steal a possession here or there at a key time. And we did that with turnover. And like I said, there were a couple, we got a couple stops in there where it was kind of like, oh, here they come, and all of a sudden that kind of, quelled the tide. And then we had success offense, went back up big. And, it was just, but like I said, that's the cool thing about coaching and watching games and playing in this conference is every game's going to be a little different. It might be a slobber knocker, 24-21. It might be a 48-45, and we've been in every kind of game. And, defensively, like I said, I thought they did a great job of playing that game the way it was getting played. We weren't giving up big explosives, and all of a sudden, man, they got some mojo, and here they come. It was RPOs, and we still tackled well the whole game, and kind of a bad term to throw out there on my part, get carved up, but we gave up some yardage. We didn't give up explosive, quick boom, score, boom, score.
I think if you look at time of possession,
yes, we made them work.
The key.
We made them work.
They won the time of possession by a significant number. Because when Southern was on offense, Southern scored and scored quickly. But Southeast had maybe 2 shorter drives. The rest were all time-consuming, work your way down the field because we didn't turn it over. So they never had great field position ever in the game.
And the turnovers that we created were at opportune times, and another area where we've done a really good job, maybe not statistically way up in the country, but the timeliness of those turnovers is a huge part of that too.
It's also why stats can be deceiving.
Yes.
I mean, look, you can see, and I know our good friend Rodney Watson, he thinks time of possession is like the most important stat of them all in football. I tell him not necessarily all the time, and he's like, I disagree with you, which is not the first disagreement that me and RW have had. But like you said, SEMO had the football for almost 34 minutes in the game, 33 minutes, 19 seconds. SAU only had it for 26 minutes and 41 seconds. So tremendous effort. It was a great win. But now it's time to look ahead to Indiana State. And before we talk about the Sycamores, let's introduce their head coach, Kurt Mallory. It's one of those names that in the state of Indiana, I mean, you talk about football family royalty. It's hard to find a family that has impacted football in the state of Indiana more than the Mallory family. Bill Mallory, who was Kurt's dad, still the all-time winningest coach at Indiana. We'll get into that and some of the lessons that he's learned from his dad. But also his brothers, Doug and Mike, have had outstanding careers winning national championships at the college level. They've been a part of Super Bowls in the NFL. You talk about a football family. It is by far the Mallory family is a football DNA family, Coach Board.
Yeah, and having lived that life, that's the role model name family. I got introduced to the Mallorys when we were at Northern Illinois and had a conversation with Coach Bill, and once in a while you have one of those impactful conversations with somebody that just sticks with you, and it just really I caught the aura of why he was so successful at Indiana and Northern Illinois and Colorado, and then obviously Kurt and his brothers living that life. It got passed on to them big time because. Like Coach Mallory, I told him on the podcast, like he's always been a wagon of a person, a human to me, as opposed to just knowing him through the coaching aspects. Just a tremendous dude.
You know, the NIL, all this stuff, the roster turnover, it's everything that Coach Hill and his staff are putting in through. But what's so great that we get to see each and every day is, I know you guys feel it because you're here in Carbondale and you guys go to practices all the time with me, the type of character that Coach Hill recruits. I mean, as great of a player that DJ Williams is, it's who he is, the guy we get to see each and every day at practice and just gets to talk to. And I can tell you, because I've been on the other side, that's exactly the type of guy that Kurt Mallory recruits to come to Indiana State. Is, yes, you want guys who are no doubt going to be good football players, but it's a much bigger picture. And I think even in today's day and age and culture where that may not necessarily get talked about a ton, I think that's a really important thing that clearly Coach Mallory still values in his program.
Yeah, and I think initially when the portal came to be, these coaches at this FCS level were thinking, oh, man, there's going to be a lot of FBS talent that just wants to play the game, and we'll go grab some of these great athletes, and didn't necessarily consider the person behind it. As we've come to know, there's always a reason somebody's in the portal. Yeah. It's not always just because of playing time. There are other factors that can go into it, and I think once you make a couple of mistakes with the portal, then you go back to your basic core values and go, okay, there's got to be guys out there that are going to fit the way we want to be as people, as athletes, as teammates, as representatives of the university. And I think that's what both Nick and Coach Mallory have done the last several years to bring in the exact kind of guy that you would have wanted out of high school, and they left for whatever reason, but now you've got a chance to get them back.
And you've got to be good at that, and the people around you, staff-wise, have to be good at that. And that speaks to Nick and Coach Mallory's character. That term transformational, as opposed to transactional. You got to get the right guys, and to be able to pick that out in those short windows of time when you get to talk to these kids and recruit them through the portal and that type of thing is a really tough deal. And when you see it come together and you see the end product of kids that have transferred into Southern Illinois or transferred into Indiana State and who they are and who they have become, it is really cool.
And as you will see and hear from Coach Mallory in a moment, with us, very calm demeanor, very respectful man, first class in so many ways. But I hope maybe you had an opportunity to hear his dad speak to football teams. It's the same way with Kurt. When it gets to football mode and they get an opportunity, seeing that switch to go from how he is with us, which is who he is, but then if you ever want to wonder why Indiana State football teams never quit, if you want to know why those guys run through a brick wall for their head coach, you ever listen to Bill Mallory give a speech, you listen to Kurt Mallory talk, like that to me is what's most moving about those guys, is just their way to connect with players. And it just goes back to what you were saying. It's way more transformational than transactional.
Yeah. And if you ever got the opportunity to talk to Bill Mallory, very much like Coach Schembeckler, the team. That day I talked to him, it was program based. It was like, what are you doing? What's the tough things right now for you, at Northern Illinois at the time? And, here, we went through that. Here's how, he was a problem solver too. That's a big part of the coaching aspect of it. But yeah, it's, and that game at Indiana State has always been a tough game. And part of that's because what you're going to get out of Coach Mallory, coach teams, is they're going to be prepped and coached to win. They might throw something at you that you hadn't seen, that kind of stuff, and that just speaks to his coaching acumen that he got from his dad, and just cool deal.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and dive into our interview with the head coach of Indiana State football, Kurt Mallory. How did the bye week treat the Sycamores? I know you guys, a lot like the Salukis, have been on the road. You guys had tremendous challenges at Montana, at Indiana. How did you guys kind of recoup in that bye week for you and the Sycamores?
Well, I'm sure same thing with majority of our teams in our conference. It was an opportunity to get better. we had, you wanted to take a hard look at the first 4 games. Started off 2-0, played 2 really good opponents, but when you look at it, we're probably where we should be. 2-2. You'd love to be 4-0, 3-1, but we have a lot of work to do, and that's what we did during the open week. Was really get into what we need to get better at. Win a lot of good on good Tuesday and Thursday of last week, and then obviously got into our next opponent with Southern Illinois come Saturday, but really felt it was a great opportunity for us to get some guys back health wise, but more importantly, get some things cleaned up and doing better.
Coach, most importantly, I guess before we get into your team and the game, and we'll talk football in a moment, but your youngest, Margot, I know just started college at IU this year. So more importantly, how's dad? How's mom? Lori holding up with your youngest now in college? I mean, it seems like that's hard to believe with all of your kids now, either having graduated or now in school with Sam, I still think, at Indiana State.
Yep. Yeah. We've been really blessed as coach has been through this, when you can be at one place where all your children go from, are in the same high school system all 4 years. You're blessed, in this profession. You don't always have that opportunity. And, Indiana State's blessed us with that opportunity. It's been a great place to raise a family. 2 of my sons, one played for me, the other one works for me in the video department. And Margot's now at IU as a freshman, but everyone's doing great. Lori's doing wonderful. She wears a lot of different hats, as you know, and couldn't be more blessed to be here at Indiana State.
Coach, just speaking, and I lived it just like you, coach's kids are coach's kids. And, I've always thought of you as just a wagon of a person outside of football, but like the impact that being a coach's kid, you and your brothers, you're kind of like the Harbaughs, in my opinion. But how has that continued to impact you, and just kind of growing up that way and passing that on to your kids, and and being in programs and the ups and the downs of being a college head football coach?
Well, we all got into it, for the kids and the players and being around young men and the relationships. That's what you miss the most, or what I cherish the most. And, my brothers and I got into a great profession. We had a great influence in our father, the impact that he made on young men's lives. It was easy for us to get into this. And, but when you see these guys leave Indiana State and come back, and the impact and the relationships that you have are lifelong.
Yeah, you care about the players. I was just telling Luke a story when I was at Northern. Bill and Pat Culpepper came to a thing, and had a conversation with both guys, and I walked away from the one with your dad, and it was like, man, he really still cares about Northern Illinois, and cared about me, trying help me. And conversation with Pat Culpepper, I felt like it was a pregame speech. I had to go out and play 2 hours later, but I always remember that, just kind of you could tell why he was successful was just, it was just that even keel, and he truly cared, even though he wasn't at, Northern at that time.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it. I think, you always have a special place in your heart, where you've been and seen a lot of these young men. I know wherever my dad's been a head coach, he looked back, and I know Coach Kill, I put in the same boat, and the impact that he made with his players, whether it's at Pittsburgh State, Saginaw, whether it's Southern Illinois, whether it's Northern Illinois, whether it's Minnesota, New Mexico State, wherever he's been, the impact and the respect that, we as coaches have for people like Jerry Kill and Bill Mallory, you can never have enough of.
Coach, you said you're probably where you should be at 2-2 with the losses at IU and at Montana. How did that Montana game come about for you all? It's a pretty tough number 4 game of the season. And with as young as your squad still continues to be, you've got some veterans, but when you look up and down the roster, it's still a young group. To take into that atmosphere had to be quite an experience.
It was. It was. Obviously we had a huge challenge going to Missoula. I'd never been there. Of course, spent some time in Wyoming, played at the Dakotas. This was an awesome environment. And I heard how loud it was, but boy, is it loud. And they compared it to a Penn State whiteout. I've been part of those, and it was every bit as loud. And it was an awesome environment to be a part of it. We are a young team. That's no different than I'm sure a lot of programs. But it was a great experience for them to play in that type of environment, because we're going to play in those type of environments, whether it's in Carbondale, whether it's in South Dakota, whether it's in North Dakota, you just are. And so it was a great opportunity for us. I felt like we came out with great energy, and had some plays that got away from us, but I thought they kept fighting, and we can grow from that.
To build off of what Coach Poor was talking about, your dad, Coach Mallory, and there's a lot of conversations that we have had on record, off record, and it's really those conversations in that office that I hold really close to me and still to this day. And one of the conversations that I remember us having, you shared a letter that your dad wrote, and it was shortly after, I believe, he was let go at IU. And I know that was a really important letter, and you shared it to me. And it was one of those things where it's like, man, that really embodies who your dad was. But it's also a great reminder that you've always had with you. One, why you've always kept on to that, why that's something that you hold really close to you, and really the lessons that you take from it really as a reminder for you, and the blessing that you have to lead a great program there in Terre Haute and Indiana State.
Well, I think, something that I've heard my dad say a lot, the coach I played for, Bo Schembechler, my dad replaced Coach Schembechler at Miami of Ohio when Coach Schembechler went to Michigan. That's kind of our connection there. They were close friends. But, one thing that I always heard, but I also saw him do it, and that was, it's the sooner in life you realize it's not what you did for Indiana or Michigan, it's what Michigan or Indiana has done for you. And I think that's the approach you take, and when my dad was let go at Indiana, it wasn't about Bill Mallory. It was about what Indiana University did for him, what he did for the family. And that's, I'm sure, very similar to Coach Kill, and what everyone like us would say, everything he's done, what Bill Mallory's done for Indiana, Jerry Kill has done for Southern Illinois. That's not how they look at it. They look at it what Southern Illinois did for them and what Indiana did for them. And so I think that's a constant reminder that you have from guys like them that you respect the most in this profession, And so when my dad was let go at Indiana, it wasn't about him. It was about getting on board and supporting the next guy. And that's really what it's all about. It's about the program at Indiana, that we need to get behind Coach Cameron, who we all have connections. Cam recruited me to Michigan. And so he was actually a position coach, and Cam was in town last weekend. He's from Terre Haute. So we're all kind of connected through that. But that letter was stating to all the alumni, let's get behind this program. I'd be at Michigan coaching or Illinois coaching. And although I knew my dad was cheering for me, he was also wearing Indiana gear. But I never questioned that he wasn't rooting for Illinois or Michigan. But it was more about, the program and the players, and that even though he may have been dressed in Indiana when we played, when I was at Illinois or Michigan, I never doubted that he was rooting for me, but he was supporting those programs.
Coach, you used the term program, and I know today college football as it is, has that been an adjustment for you in terms of now it's more like you're putting a team together each year and trying to hang on to that? Hey, this is our program. These are the core concepts, with those short amounts of windows of time to actually get to know kids in the recruiting process and then build those relationships, knowing that, hey, maybe they may not be here next year.
Well, I think the one thing that I'm a firm believer, and I say this every year, in January, I tell the team, this is our team. And we're going to bring guys in, they're going to join the team. And if they're not going to be a part of it, then they're not going to be here. And so, and I've tried to, hold true to that. I believe that we have core values that I'm not going to adjust on or will adjust on. This is our team. This is our culture. This is our chemistry. And then the trick to it all is to bring young men in that are going to be like-minded, and that it's going to be about the team. And, things get tough, as we all know. You can have one good week. You can have a tough one the next one. That's part of it. But you better surround yourself with great people that care about each other.
Yeah, there seemed to be a thought process the first 3 years that you had to continually re-recruit your own players during each year. But I think you just said it best. If the foundation is set and you're all on the same page to begin with, it's not that big of a deal where you don't have to constantly go, oh, we still want you. Hey, you had a great game. We do want you. You don't really need to do that. It's going to take care of itself.
That's right. That's right. Luke and I were together my first year, and we didn't have the best year. We went 0-11. I think the average score was probably 50-12. I think I had that board up there, Luke. I nailed a board in the door well, so they had to crawl under it every time they walked in the locker room. It's a concert.
Crawl.
But I knew we had a good foundation. Guys I didn't recruit, guys that bought in, like Jonas Griffith. There was many more that wanted to win, that bought into it. Now that first year, it didn't matter. We were gonna go with the guys that were all in, and then the next year we, turned the thing around and had the biggest turnaround in college football. But it was because of the foundation of guys that bought into it, and they were a part of us, and they're a big part of this foundation and building that culture from that point on.
Coach Mallory, as you alluded to, unlike these two to my right, I've had the fortunate opportunity to really see how you lead your program and see how you conduct your business and how you build Indiana State football. When you think back all the way back when you were hired at January day in 2017 to now, what are you most proud of when you look at your program today to where it was when you first took it over?
Well, I think, how they represent, how our players represent themselves and their family off the field in a first-class manner. Nothing makes me more proud than to get an email or someone grab me on the street and just say, what gentlemen they are and how well they represent. And then I always say it to the team, as we all did as coaches, Pat, is that, football's not forever. But your degree is. Someday football is going to be taken away from you, but your degree will never be taken away from you. And so, and how our young men have represented themselves off the field, what they've done in the classroom, from a team GPA, I won't repeat, to what it is now of a 3.3. And that they're excelling in the classroom. Those are the two things that, because that's about life, and what people have done for me along the way, and what I'm trying to do for these guys to put them in position to be successful in life.
Coach Mallory, one of the things I think is a great testament to you, and it's been shown throughout your time in Terre Haute, is as the year goes along, your teams get better. I can even think the 2018, when that year got flipped, didn't start off great. Northern Iowa, 33-0 at home. The next week, you take South Dakota State all the way to the wire. A couple of years back, I think 2022, my last year with you, Montana comes in the Terre Haute. They kind of had our way. They kind of had our way that day. A couple of weeks later, you take number 1 North Dakota State all the way to the brink. Your teams just keep getting better, even when there's some early season results that don't necessarily go your way. What do you really credit that to, Coach Mal? I know a lot of that is yourself, your staff, but of your teams always seem to do a really good job as the year goes along. You guys keep getting better. and how you reinforce that with your team that, look, this is game one of a gauntlet now. I mean, there's a lot of football left in front of us here this year.
Well, I'll tell you, it's about the people I'm fortunate to be surrounded with. You know, I've had some great coaches here. You've gotten to know him, Luke. You know, I've got Daryl Funk back here. I've worked with him 3 times. You know, you surround, you know, head coach is only as good as his assistants and the people around him. And whether it's Seth Montgomery, Luke Martin, John Sherman, you've got great people. And, you know, you're going to find out who you can win with, but you have to first find out who you're going to lose with. And because that's when it really gets hard. When winning's going, great. But when you go through tough times, you want to know who's going to fight their way out of it. And I've been blessed. I've had great assistant coaches that some are still here. I've had Mark Smith. I mean, I can go on and on. Brad Wilson. You know, just on and on. The people I've been fortunate to work with on a daily basis is just, you know, how blessed I am. And so, and I know Nick would say the same thing about his staff, you know, and how fortunate we are to be around great people, because I try to hire them as what kind of husbands, what kind of fathers, and what kind of teachers they are. When my wife and I got here 9-10 years ago, we wanted to build a staff we'd want our son to be coached by. And I, without a doubt, had any reservation to having my son come here. It wasn't about who the head coach was. It was about who the assistants were going to be and the people he was going to be around.
One of the things that don't know if you know, I know right now, obviously, you know, Elijah got hurt against Eastern Illinois, but one more start for him, and he'll be the guy that started the most games for you at quarterback in your tenure in Terre Haute. I know Elijah's been a lot, but man, Keegan has stepped in. It's been a role that he has filled as well. We know after going through a year like last year, how important it is to stay healthy at that position, but the confidence that you've had and what Keegan has shown, I mean, I think he's another guy, Coach Mal, you can see he is improving with each and every time that he's stepping out on the field too.
He is. He's, you know, he gets better each week. You know, Elijah was our starting quarterback coming out of last year. And, you know, did Keegan get many reps with the ones? Not many. You know, I mean, it was pretty clear cut that, and so in fairness to him, you know, his opportunities, the timing of the routes, you know, getting in front of the huddle with them was a little bit minimum. And so, you know, his opportunity is just getting better and better. You know, they've always known his passion and his guttiness, you know, to lead, but he's just going to get better week in and week out.
Did you make that road trip home visit? I know he's from Longmont, Colorado. You out there elk hunting or anything?
No, he's. I didn't do any hunting, but tried to stay on the road, not off the road there.
Keegan get, I don't want to say extra reps during your bye week, but was that a time for him to kind of reconnect with some of those guys? I know he's obviously been with you, but now as number one with Elijah's injury, do the reps mean even more to Keegan, and every pass he throws is one that, you know, he knows this is important as we move forward?
Yeah, I think the open week has been really good for him. You know, there's a lot of situations that you're putting your starting quarterback in, probably more so during the open week, whether it be 2-minute drills, whether it's third down, those type of situations where it's either off the field or on the field, or win the game or lose the game. And I think those opportunities obviously do nothing but help him as a football player.
I know week to week, we talk about it all the time, whether it's a win or a loss. Have you continued to learn about your team from week to week in terms of situations, one side of the ball, the other side of the ball? I know what your teams are going to be about. You talk about those core values, but just, you know, being young, having some new guys infused in there. Have you felt like they've continued to develop and you've learned some things about your team?
Yeah, you know, we're playing a lot of guys on defense, always have. Guys are getting good experience, guys stepping up and getting better week to week. I'm seeing some other guys jump out. Nick Osho's really has gotten an opportunity, has really shown. Zach Drotti is a guy that has really stepped up. But these guys have been given opportunities, and they're really making the most of it.
Coach, when you just look, there's so many guys on your roster, even though, as we talked about, the changing culture in college football is sometimes that roster can turn over quite a bit, but there are still so many guys, whether it's, I think of Rocco, Harry, Shane. There's many more names I know I'm forgetting that were there when I was there, and they were young, and they are still there and now improving and having even bigger roles for your team. Coach Hill talks about all the time too, the development piece. It's not just, hey, going out recruiting, getting in the transfer portal. You have to do all of those things to continue to move your program forward. But when you look Braxton again on defense, I mean, there are a lot of guys that have developed in your program, and the pride. What is the pride you take that there are still a lot of guys who are coming through Indiana State football as young men, young freshmen, and staying committed to you and the vision of the program?
Yeah, our best ambassadors are our players, and and just like in any program, a lot of these kids have been through an awful lot. We had probably the biggest nightmare of my life was getting a call in the middle of the night when you had a horrific car accident, and these guys were all freshmen living in a dorm with these individuals that lost their lives. But they've stuck together, and you hate to look at horrific times to make you stronger, but these guys have been through a lot more than just football. And I think it's, grown their bond and their tightness. And unfortunately, we had a player pass away during camp, and, that was a non-football related injury, or it was a medical issue, but just horrific too to lose an individual. So this team has been through a lot, and I think has made them stronger.
No question. Coach, I know we're coming up here on our time, but look, we've talked a lot about your team, but what I think also deserves credit is, man, you've been around some really talented quarterbacks throughout your coaching career. You were at Wyoming with Josh Allen. Obviously, when you were at Illinois and you guys were able to go to the Rose Bowl, Juice Williams was having an outstanding career. I mean, there are many others. I think you just missed Antoine Randall when you went back at Indiana, but of course, very familiar with him. When you look at DJ Williams, I know he was a guy that you recruited coming out of school. I think there's no question he has made just strides year after year ever since his days at Murray. You've been around the best of the best. You don't get to necessarily see the leadership skills behind the scenes like we do with DJ, which to me, he's that Jonas Griffith type, Ryan Boyle type of guys that were in your program. What do you see just from a tape quarterback standpoint that has really stood out to you because you've seen some of the elite guys in this sport play that position well?
Well, he's an extreme talent. I was fortunate this past summer. Of course, I got to know him in recruiting. After the Murray State game, he came up to me and thanked me, for giving him an opportunity, because we were the first to offer him. He was going to come to Indiana State. Was trying to get him in some capacity, and Murray State was able to have a better opportunity there, maybe a full scholarship. But he wasn't getting much recruiting at the time. It was during COVID. I didn't really think anything of it, but for him to come up to me and say that says a lot about a young man. Well, then this past summer, I went to media day, and I'm getting old, Luke. I'm on the treadmill or whatever I do, but I go into the workout every morning, and who do I see right there next to me working out is DJ. And so I stole some opportunities to talk to him a little bit, and just, what an impressive young man, he's got a personality. You can see why guys would want to get behind him, and the leader that he is. But the off the field is as great a player as he is. I was most impressed with just getting to know him in a short amount of time. There's no question he's a tremendous talent, but I think his future's bright as a young man. He's gonna do well. Going to do extremely well. I think a lot of him as a football player, but I think even more of him as a young man.
Coach, before we get you on your way, there of course are so many coaches that we've talked to this year, and maybe when I say man, they talk about DJ, and deservingly so. He deserves that credit. But I also think it's very short-sighted to be like, man, there's not a lot of good dudes around him, especially from his skill set on the offensive side. But you even said in your presser, you really like this Saluki defense this year. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Every team in this league is really darn good. The challenge each and every week is always going to be an extremely difficult challenge. But just in essence, what do you respect most just about this Saluki version of this team that you're going to see come Saturday night?
Well, I think this is one of the top teams in our conference. I think, starts with the quarterback. I think he's phenomenal. But, Nick Hill, Coach Kill, I mean, they're always got really good football teams. And they're always really well coached. They're violent. They play fast. They got great skill. It's hard to find a weakness. But I think they're a really good football team in all three phases. You watch them on special teams, they play as fast as they do on offense and defense. So this will be a heck of a challenge for us this weekend.
Coach Mallory, you know how much I appreciate you for not just taking the time to talk to us today, but obviously, Saturday is always a hard game for me because of my love and appreciation for you and what Indiana State has always done for me. But it's always just one day a year where it gets really hard, and the rest of the year I'm always pulling for the Sycamores. But, Coach, thanks so much for the time. It was so great to catch up with you, and really look forward to seeing you and your team here at Saluki Stadium on Saturday.
Still going to have my before the game talk with you, our yearly get together.
That's right. Well, it's great to see everybody. I got to get ready for a staff meeting here, but Luke, no tough questions. I thought for sure I was going to get a tough one here.
He's softened, Coach. He's soft.
I was like, when's it coming?
Well, like I said, big thank you to Coach Kurt Mallory taking time to join us. An awesome conversation and so many great stories shared, and said first-class dude. And it's only one game a year that I don't pull for Coach Mallory and the Sycamores, and it will be on Saturday. And let's get into his team a little bit more. Again, Elijah Owens, no doubt, is the guy that really stirs the drink for them offensively. He hurt his collarbone against Eastern Illinois. He's not expected to play this weekend. They do expect to get him back at some point. They don't expect it again to be this weekend. Who knows? He could be a fast healer and maybe potentially could come back. But Keegan Patterson, who's filled in for him, still can do a lot of the similar things that Elijah Owens has been able to show, Mike.
Yeah, he hasn't had quite the percentage completion that Elijah has, and Elijah's probably a little bit better well, he's number one quarterback for a reason. So yeah. Keegan wasn't quite there yet, but that doesn't mean he's that far behind. He's competent. He knows the offense well. Coach Mallory trusts him with everything that they want to do offensively, and as long as he stays within himself and runs that Indiana State offense the way that Coach Mallory and the offensive coordinator want it to go, then they can still be a pretty effective. They've got couple of decent running backs. They've got at least veteran wide receivers. They are a young team overall, but have a couple veteran wide receivers who've been there, done that, and dangerous kick returners as well.
And that stats term comes back into play too. The Patterson kid, you look at his background, Southern Cal, transfer, junior college, very capable, but has been in two games in the last two outings that
you get to start against Indiana and then Montana.
And Montana's Montana. I mean, once there was blood and water, here they came, and got after him pretty good. And so, he's like Coach Mal talked about. He's learning situations and but very capable. And you talked about the running back Ocho and even Plez Lawrence. I mean, good running backs. And Funk's back over there, long time O-line coach, been a bunch of places. They're really good, well coached up front. They're going to do what Coach Mallory wants them to do. They're going to try and establish that run game and then lean on some skill guys.
To your point, I mean, establishing the running game is going to be so key for them. I mean, Nick Osho really had a coming out party against Montana. Now, granted, Montana had most of their reserves into the game, but still, when you have 5 carries for 134 yards and 2 scores in the second half, they were looking for any sort of positive to build on, and my goodness, they got it in Osho, and I'm sure we are going to see him this weekend, and along with Ples Lawrence. And when Indiana State football's been good, they run the football with physicality.
They do, and it's going to be a nice test for the front seven for this Saluki defense, who have been very good the last several weeks of controlling the run game. There's not been many explosive runs against them at all, and that's due to the fact that those 2 guys on the ends, Donnie and Jake, are doing a heck of a job pinching in, leaving cleanup for Peyton and Caden and the other guys up front, and then the linebackers just continue to get better and better and better. It's so much fun to watch that front seven play.
Yeah, and don't forget that run game gets going, wide receiver wise. They got some dudes on film. They ran by Montana several times.
Rashad Rochelle, remember that name?
And Coach talked about he's a transfer, Drogby, I think, kind of coming on. But they've got 4 guys that they can run. And like I said, I saw that on film. They were running by. They just didn't have time to get the ball up and throw it.
Zach Drotty is who you're thinking of.
Zach Drotty, yeah, a big-time FBS transfer guy.
And just a sophomore. Again, they are
really
a young team. Only 5 or 6 seniors starting in their 2 deep. That's young.
But defensively, stay with the process. Keep tackling well. Keep playing hard up front. Like I said, that's been the best thing I've seen out of our defenses. We've played base defense very, very well. We haven't had to dial stuff up to create pressure, that type of thing. But pressure will be important because that really showed on film. When they got to Keegan Patterson, that game spun a completely different way.
Look, and you look at, again, some of those games and what they played. I mean, going on the road and playing IU, everybody is seeing how good that Indiana team is. And I know, look, Coach Mallory and the Sycamores did not want to get beat 73-0. But then the week later, you see what they did to Illinois, and you're like, I think IU's pretty darn good. Not that you feel that much better about your result.
Just win. Just win.
You just find a way to get that together. But let's go ahead and flip it to Indiana State's defense. David Elson, not unfamiliar with Southern Illinois. His first ever coaching job was a GA stint here at SIU in 94-95, and he was also the defensive back coach and defensive coordinator later on 2015 was on staff with Coach Hill before Coach Hill ultimately got the head job here. Again, it's a defense that may not necessarily overwhelmingly wow you, Coach Poor, in terms of their numbers, but it's what Mike Trude mentioned. They don't give up a lot of explosive plays, and I think that's really they really make you earn everything that you get.
Yeah, they're going to be a 4-man front, and good players up front. The 2 ends I was impressed with as in terms of, sack-wise, like you said, there's not big stats there, but guys that are capable of getting up the field and creating some havoc. And then, in the back end, they've always been really solid back there. A couple of their leading tacklers are safeties and the corner, and some of that goes to, you got to be a physical corner on crack replace to go take on running backs and lead blocks and that type of thing. But I would call them a really balanced defense in terms of talent. They got good dudes at every spot. And Coach Elson, he's one of those guys. He'll walk them all up there. There'll be 7 guys standing on the line of scrimmage, and they'll play flat 0 across the back and just go, hey, if you beat us, you beat us. And if they get to you, he'll keep pounding all the mud out of that hole he can. I mean, you'll see it again and again and again.
They've always liked to bring pressure from different spots at that linebacker crew, and they've got 31 tackles for loss on the year. Only 8 sacks, so the pressure on the quarterback not as great, but they still continue with those linebackers to get into the backfield and stop those plays. And most of their tackles for loss are from the DBs and the linebackers. So they're bringing somebody almost every play somebody's coming that I mean, you know it's coming, you're just not sure from which direction it's coming.
And Coach Mallor being a defensive guy, Coach Elson, they do a great job of self-scouting themselves too, because you're not going to see those things in a prescribed certain. You're not going to know it's coming in this situation. I mean, they'll dial it up on first down to stop the run. Then they'll play you some just base Tampa 2 on on a 1st and 10. So you get a lot of different looks, and DJ is going to have to do a good job of recognizing what he sees and adjusting to it.
Indiana State has always had really good linebackers. And Braxton Sampson, their second leading tackler, he's a local kid. Again, I brought him up with Coach Mao, just one of the all-around, just great dudes that you'll see a part of a program. He's having an outstanding year. Dallas Westhoff, who joined him at Media Day, he's yet to play this year. He's been battling through some injuries. I think he's close to potentially have an opportunity to play. Clark as well, that safety, he is a physical dude, leading them in tackles. Again, Indiana State, through the years, they have always had some really stout guys in the middle of that defense, and it's no surprise that one of their safeties, their leading tackler as well, can be a physical guy with Clark, obviously, transferring in from Central Connecticut State.
And 2 other sophomores are getting a lot of playing time at linebacker, and in the top 10 of them in tackles this year. So interchangeable at that linebacker spot, and they'll come at you from all kinds of different directions, and you got to pay attention to them.
Yeah, and like Coach Mal was talking about, on film, it's like new number. There's another guy.
Yeah.
How much? And they're rolling good depth in the back end. They're rolling depth up front. They're rolling depth at linebacker, and that just kind of speaks that they got a lot of confidence in their system, in their schemes, and they're trying to plug the best guys in and keep them fresh and playing hard.
Well, look, last year's game, I think, is one that still sits in the mind of all of us, but definitely that whole locker room for SIU as we transition it to the game on Saturday night. It's kind of hard to really think about. Now, we understand the opportunity to make the postseason last year was very small by the Indiana State game. But after that game, it was over. The Indiana State was the team that ended Southern's chances of having any sort of a remarkable comeback. Of course, that game, you get up 17-0. You feel really good going into the halftime locker room. And give Indiana State credit for not mailing that game in. They came back and they earned the comeback. But there are so many things where you go back and you just scratch your head as a Saluki fan. There were key drop passes in that game. There were obviously key turnovers in the game. Michael Lindauer streaking right down the field. And, of course, that was his first game back. And hard to blame a guy that Lindauer, who was a coach just the week prior. He did all that he could to help out the team. But the point being is there's many times where I think you can maybe, after a bye week, and historically SIU has struggled after a bye week, 1-6 in their last 7 true bye in games coming after a bye week. I think I don't want to speak for you guys, but I will anyways. This is not going to be a Saluki team that is going to overlook Indiana State on Saturday. They are going to take this team just as serious as they would anybody else on their schedule, and a lot of it does stem from the very disappointment that they experienced in Terre Haute last year.
Yeah, the mentality of this group is so much more mature than the team of a year ago, which, once all the injuries started piling up, it's really tough to maintain that positive attitude of, okay, now we've got our 4-string quarterback. Now we've got a GA coming back into quarterback. And it's just something you've never faced before in your life, and it's a brand new situation. This year, Nick has done a phenomenal job, and it's trickled down into everybody because we talk to them all the time about, hey, we've got that North Dakota State because we can talk about it. Hey, North Dakota State's coming up in 2 weeks. Who? When?
Yeah.
When do we play them? They're not thinking about North Dakota State. They are thinking about this game, and every one of them who was on this field or on that field a year ago remembers that feeling of being up 17-0 and not scoring and losing that game in the second half.
Yeah, you call that adversity, and to me it speaks to the leadership from top down through the quarterback, through the guys making the defensive calls, that you learn from that game. You learn from that situation, and it was what it was. Last year. you know, you can only imagine the thoughts in guys' heads as far as like, you know, we got that guy.
And Indiana State had guys missing too.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it's part,
Yes.
And
part of
it was one of those games where it was everything. It was inadvertent whistle calls. It was, you know, explosive play.
You mean he did fumble it?
That's what the guy asked me down there in the end zone. He wanted my opinion. Hell, he didn't even know I wasn't coaching. I got blue jeans and boots on down there, you know. But I think that's what you're talking about is the difference of just where we're at right now, and really speaks to Nick's philosophy of process over results. It's the next play, it's the next practice, it's the next game, and you know the Flowers. Hey, whatever.
And it's not just the captains that are being the leaders this year.
Yeah.
It's the Chris Prestos. It's the Vincent Davises. It's the guys who are not walking to shake hands with the other team's captains at the beginning of the game. It's team leaders that are speaking up and keeping everybody accountable for everything that they're doing on a daily basis, and that speaks volumes.
Good word, accountability. Everybody knows their job, and they're being held accountable for doing their job, not just on Saturdays, but that first play of practice this morning, again tomorrow.
This has been a series that's literally almost a coin flip. It's 31-29 according to the Saluki football record book. Literally almost 50-50 right down the middle, and it's been a series over the last 15 years that's almost directly split as well.
And road teams, again, have done better than the home team in the series, again, the last 10 years or so, from what I remember.
Yeah, I think it's consistency and finishing, because all those games, and I remember them, there were several points in all those games where it's like, we got to step on their throat right here and it's over. And, you know, credit to them, they'd fight scratch, they'd make a play, get back in it. And, you know, like I said, that was always a tough game against them, because you knew you were going to be in a tussle. You knew they were going to keep coming, and they were going to have good game plans and how to attack you and all that type of stuff.
We hope you join us on Saturday. It's going to be a remarkable night for football. Kickoff will be at 6 o'clock. Our pregame coverage will start at 5 o'clock, as it will be the Salukis and Sycamores. Big thank you to head coach Kurt Mallory for taking time to join us. We appreciate him being able to come on and talk about his Sycamore football team. So for Mike Trude, for Coach Pat Poor, I am Luke Martin saying so long, Saluki Nation. We will see you Saturday, finally, at Saluki Stadium. Go Dogs.
This has been Saluki Royalty, the official podcast for Saluki Athletics. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review however you listen. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Saluki Sports Network.